Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Counselor's Office. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor, and we are going to check out a video by Shadow Destiny. I saw this on Twitter, and it was kind of blowing up. And I was very interested. This is going to probably be a little bit longer video, so buckle up, because we are going to react to it. I didn't use my React screen because I'm lazy and don't want to deal with a green screen right now. So, ciao. There it is. We're going to watch it. The Rise and Fall of Destiny 2. It's over. And, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, if Revenant doesn't pop off, I do see more people leaving. The player base for Destiny has never been lower. This is probably the worst we've ever had. It's not good. The game is on life support currently. And Sony's already got their teeth on Bungie. So I'm very interested to see what... it's nice to see someone else's viewpoints, not just mine. So I hope to see some fair criticism, and we're not being absurd. So let's jump into it. Oh, wait, we got some... the cutscenes. Here we go.
Leadership and bad game design. These are three of the many things that contributed to the fall of Destiny 2.
Okay,
Destiny used to be one of the biggest and most beloved. Corporate greed, terrible leadership, and bad game design.
Do I think this is what led to the downfall of Bungie and Destiny? And when I say downfall, like the game is still going, but it is in the it's in the worst state that it's ever been. And so we're in the state because of corporate greed, terrible leadership, and bad game design. I think the base game is fine. I think there are definitely some bad designs narratively, for sure, and just content wise, like the flow of a game, like of the episode and all that stuff. Corporate greed, absolutely. Terrible leadership, absolutely. I think also pride, ego. I think Bungie as a company, even developers, like to say it's just leadership that has egos and pride. I think I think that's not a fair assessment. I would absolutely say that ego and pride is definitely one of the things that have led to Bungie's downfall, because we even had developers attack other games like Diablo 4 back in the day. Like, especially when Destiny wasn't, in that time, it was Lightfall wasn't in a good state, but people were hyped for Diablo 4. And you had developers attacking and making, saying things about Diablo 4. And it's kind of funny. It's like, bro, look at your own shitty game right now, and you're going to attack someone else's game? Okay. It's just, okay.
These are three of the many things that contributed to the fall of Destiny 2. Destiny used to be one of the biggest and most beloved games, but now over 95% of its players have left.
Yes,
and
that's
most
very
of its
true.
Content creators are being forced to cover other topics or quit the game entirely.
I want to say that I checked some of Astrocross's videos. He has always played different games. Like, I used to watch like Mr. Fruit, like back in D1. Was it D1? Early Destiny. I used to watch Mr. Fruit, but like, he also plays different games. And I think Astrocross is the same thing. Like Dado, yes, he was very hardcore, and he is trying, from last I've seen some tweets and stuff, people were talking about him trying to step away from Destiny and play other things, because he's done it for so long. But I would agree, most people are moving away. I mean, if even Bife is doing other lore besides Destiny, because let's be honest, the Destiny lore so far has been ass in episodes. So there's not much to really talk about, and the 10-year saga is coming to an end. So this all plays a part of it. But yes, a lot of people are stepping away from Destiny because of poor choices from Bungie.
Entirely. Today, we are going to analyze why all of this happened, and we're going to break down the timeline of bad decisions that ultimately led to the downfall of my favorite game. Before we get too deep into it, though, we've partnered with Geology to bring you this video.
And I'm going to let the ad play, because I'm going to be respectful of ads. That's something that Reacts do, and shout out to you. I'm never sponsored, so it's okay. He said my favorite game. Like, I'm critical of like 343 or now Halo Studios, or how they've done Halo, and Halo's been my baby. Destiny was the second baby I invested in. You could say Call of Duty, but I've never been like diehard Call of Duty fanboy. But when it comes to like Halo and Destiny, those have been the two games that I have spent a lot of time in my life between multiple consoles, multiple games like Halo, Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, Halo, all the Halos like I've spent time with. when you have that such an attachment, you're going to have a stronger reaction and connection and more thoughts on a game that you've just been on this ride with versus a new player who thinks that everything is fine and dandy. And I don't know why everyone's upset. This game is great. I think that's the most brain dead take. No offense if you're a new player, but if that's your counter argument to people having fair criticism, you're stupid as fuck. I could go to any game that is struggling, play some base content, and say the same damn thing. Like, finish the game thoroughly, invest some time and years into a game, fully invested, and then come back. I think that's fair because you got to realize that people like him, I'm assuming, if he's a long-time content creator, but people like me who played since the Destiny beta, we've been through all the drama, all the poor choices, all the lies and deceit, all the bull crap that Bungie's pumped out. So we have a lot of context that you might not have. And I think it's unfair for you to say, oh, well, you know what you're talking about. Bitch, I do. No offense if you're a new player, but there's those vocal minority from the new players and returning that think they know everything and you don't.
Geology is an award-winning hair and skincare company that delivers simple and effective routines that will be customized precisely for your exact needs. After you take a 60-second quiz, you'll get access to a personalized product that is made with ingredients that are proven to work and have been used by dermatologists for decades. Geology has over 10,000 5-star reviews, and they've won all 35 of these awards, with recognition from Men's Health, Ask Men Grooming Awards, and more. They believe that trust is built on results, and based on all these reviews and awards, it's clear that their product is the real deal. I know a lot of men out there don't take their skincare as seriously as
we're still continuing with that.
They realize that it's important. So if you want to start looking your best, we have a great opportunity to get you started. You can get an insane deal using my code for 70% off your personalized skincare trial set and an additional 50% off of any add-ons that you might need. Just enter my code SHADOW70 and you'll be surprised by how much better your skin will be. Thanks to Geology for partnering with us on this video, and now let's begin our story about the fall of Destiny. Before we can talk about the more recent decline of the game, we first need to go back and discuss the mistakes that were made way back in Destiny 1.
Oh, baby!
A huge amount of people quit the game back then, and of course, this contributed to the eventual fall of the franchise. See, when Destiny was first publicly revealed and then showcased in 2013, the hype—
Mars. I'm sorry, I had nostalgia bears when I saw Mars.
And expectations were sky high. We were promised that the story would be as recognizable as Star Wars, that the world would be huge and expansive, and that we would have all of these epic planets to explore.
Yeah, that is something that you got to realize that they were teasing this way. Like, Bungie was getting ready to leave after Halo 3 Reach and even like Halo 3 ODST. Like, there were hints about Destiny, and you know, we were like, that was the highest high of Halo. Even if people didn't like Halo 3 ODST, Halo 3 still was popular. Halo Reach was still very popular, especially the multiplayer. People love the story. I'm like, it's all right for me. But overall, like, Halo was at the highest peak that it could be. And this is when Bungie left. And people were like, that's my company. I'm going to follow my company. And they were excited for Destiny.
But that brings us to our first recurring issue, and that is disappointment. When the game first went live, we found out that the story was a disaster, the scale of the game was a lot smaller than it was supposed to be, and half of the planets that we were promised weren't even in the game.
Yeah, if you played the original Destiny, there were so many different story threads that were just all over the freaking place. Like, you didn't even know where to start because you'd be talking about the Fallen, and then suddenly you're talking about the Hive, and then the Vex, and then somehow the main ending is the Vex, Black Heart, and you're like, but what about the Fallen that we've been, or the Hive? Like, there's a lot of things. Like, what about the Moon? What? What's going on here? Like, there was a lot of confusing threads and dialogues.
The story in particular was extremely bad, having terrible writing, zero motivation.
I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't like bad. It was like, it was still interesting. A lot of the lore was in the Grimoire books, which is you get collectibles and you had to go read essays, which is kind of stupid. uh, which Destiny still does that. When I just like, it's whatever. I'd rather have the beef of it in the game versus having to go. You had to actually go off online on a different website to read these. When I was like, why? So it's whatever now. But back then it was more of a pain in the ass to read lore.
Zero clarity, zero explanation of anything, and then the game literally told us that it didn't have enough time to explain its own story. Many players were angry.
I don't have time to tell you why I don't have enough time. Thanks.
About all the broken promises, and although it was clear that the game did have a lot of potential, this was still a disappointing launch. This ultimately damaged the game quite a bit because as a bunch of players tried it out, many of them just permanently left due to the game under-delivering and being somewhat disappointing.
Destiny at launch was really bad. It was so bad. I played the beta. Did I play beta or alpha? One of those two I played way in advance. And honestly, I'm gonna be very honest with you. I did play the base game. I did not play Vault of Glass when it came out. I could not care. I also stopped playing, and I did not play Crota's End or like Prison Elders and all that. I didn't play any of that. It wasn't until gearing up a couple months before the Taken King that I got back into it. And then I went all the way back and I played all the content forward, grinding all the gear, trying to get Vex Mythic class because, I missed that heyday. I think I stopped playing whenever I was one of the first people to ever, and this is random story time. I was one of the first people to get Thorn. I got the Thorn quest and I didn't know what the hell it was. So I did it and I got this gun. I'm like, why is this good? Yeah, I stopped playing after that. Unfortunately, anyone who actually had Thorn and realized later on that it was just like X, it was disgusting and broken in PvP. So I never experienced that in PvP, but was probably amongst one of the first people to get Thorn, and I never appreciated it. Sad face. But yeah.
As time went on, many more players continued to quit during the content droughts of the following two expansions. The Dark Below and House of Wolves certainly brought some good things like the Raid and Trials of Osiris, but ultimately they didn't fix any of the issues that everyone was complaining about.
Angry Joe, I never watched his review on that. I kind of want to do that for nostalgia.
The Taken King expansion actually addressed all of those issues and vastly improved every single thing about the game.
The Taken King was a godsend for Destiny. It was one of the best expansions in Destiny history. I mean, there's like even the Witch Queen was great. Forsaken is probably the best expansion in Destiny's history, but like very few expansions have come out that have met the level of excitement, lore, story, and gameplay that the Taken King has brought or did bring. It is such an amazing expansion.
This was a huge highlight, and the game was a whole lot better for a while, but then we just entered yet another content drought. You might think that we have content droughts in the modern game, but these content droughts back in the day had no seasonal missions, no sandbox updates, no new loot or activities, no new story. Literally nothing happened for months.
It would literally, we get like in mid-month updates. Getting nerfs and updates and changes would take like 6 months, 3 months, 4 months. It was a goddamn time. You were just like, this is Destiny. You liked it or you stopped playing.
And this caused the game to bleed and lose quite a lot of players. Even though they enjoyed the Taken King, such an extended period of zero content would cause many of them to lose their habit of playing and then ultimately never return to the game. The sequel game...
It isn't, for those that are like, oh, crafting is the solution, no one wants loot chases. This is why Destiny was struggling. It's because there was no loot chase. Once you did everything, you got everything, there was no loot chase. Yes, there was no activities, but if they even introduced a new loot, people would at least chase that, but we didn't even have that.
Called Destiny 2 was set to launch the year after, but we were once again disappointed as the developers at Bungie decided to delay the game for an additional year. Instead of Destiny 2, we got Rise of Iron, which was just okay.
Yeah.
It didn't move anything forward.
Rise of Iron was thematically amazing, but narratively, it was very weak. Like, I can say that. I love Siva, but narratively, it was very, very weak. Siva was fantastic, but you could tell it was rushed.
In a meaningful way, but overall it was just a good expansion and people really liked the new raid.
The raid is known as one of the best raids in Destiny history. It just bar none. Last Wish can give it some. I don't even think Salvation's Edge, like obviously for day one race, it obviously known Salvation's Edge is going to have that. But when it comes to like actual raids that people loved and enjoyed, Wrath of the Machine is going to be one of the number ones.
At the very end of Destiny 1, we had the Age of Triumph event, which was
such a good
awesome,
time, baby.
And it set the expectations extremely high for Destiny 2. Unfortunately, though, these expectations would not be met the following year. People thought that the launch of Destiny 1 was pretty rough, but somehow they managed to make the launch of Destiny 2 even worse. Although the story was quite excellent, everything else like the loot...
And I just want to stop right there. I think that Red War, the story, was a phenomenal... It's probably... It was a fantastic story. Like, it was from beginning to the end, was coherent. It was consistent. It was better than Destiny 1. I like Destiny 1's story, but Destiny 2's Red War story is 10 times better. It was just, unfortunately, overshadowed by everything else in Destiny 2 that was bad or garbage that they destroyed. Like, that overshadowed everything that the Red War story did right.
The PvP, the activities, the subclasses, the ammo system, the weapons, the armor was a complete disaster.
This is why I think people who are like, oh, we need crafting, these are the same people that probably also like how Destiny 2 launched, where it was double primaries. It was generic preset roles. What they were trying to do is trying to make a Call of Duty. That's what they were trying to do. They were trying to turn Destiny into Call of Duty, where all the weapons were the same. Everyone had access to the same guns. It was predictable. It was, I guess, easier to balance, to buff and nerf. And it was boring as fuck. And everyone got a participation trophy. You just did you literally just had to do a public zone and you got a free exotic. Like, it was just so goddamn bad. And this is when we talk about bringing the chase back and not going backwards to D2. This is what we refer to, because this is what literally almost completely killed Destiny.
Once again, this was a period where our expectations were extremely high, and then we had to come crashing down to a disappointing reality. We assumed that Bungie would have learned from their past mistakes, but unfortunately we got a half-baked product that was worse than Destiny 1 in many ways.
Yeah,
in fact, some players were so disappointed that they wanted to just go back to Destiny 1 and abandon D2 altogether.
They did. This, for those of you that missed this time and you're new to Destiny, they did. They went back to the old game, which we've heard of in like Call of Duty. Some of the Call of Duties are so bad that people would play the previous Call of Duty. That's what happened with Destiny. People did not like the double primary, having no random rolls. Armor was pointless. Like, it was just, it was cosmetic. That's what armor was. It was pretty much cosmetic. And there was no mods. There was nothing. It was just, stats didn't really matter. It was just this garbage goop Call of Duty. I guess you could say maybe even Halo, but I mean, it wasn't even like good enough to say it was close to being Halo. It was bad.
Together. This disappointment surrounding the launch was catastrophic for player retention, much like it was.
Oh, baby. Yeah, look at this. I want to know where these charts are. But yes, you just based on what this chart is, you can see absolutely how bad the player base was
during the original launch of 2014. This was only amplified because many players were giving Destiny a second chance, but then they felt like they got burned by Bungie for a second time. In addition to the returning players, though, there were also millions of new players who were trying out the game, and especially with Destiny 2 coming to PC, this was our big chance to go mainstream. And
so I need to make a correction. This came out first on consoles. A lot of us bought this a second time for PC or didn't buy it for PC. I think it wasn't until Forsaken that I bought it for PC. I want you to know, like, I'm still relatively new to the PC compared to people who've been playing Destiny since it came to PC on Battle.net. I started playing on PC at the end of Battle.net's life. Destiny's life on Battle.net. I forgot when that I think it was Shadowkeep. Was it Shadowkeep that it turned over? Yeah, so like I had a Battle.net account for a very low amount of time compared to other people. But it was on PC, it was on console for the longest time. Before it was like a year, I think it was a year or a couple months, and then they released it. So PC didn't even launch on the same time because they wanted, I guess, Destiny to still be a console style game. I don't know. The best way I can explain it is they wanted Destiny 2 to be like Call of Duty or Halo, it was very obvious that they were trying to release it and then you consume the content, and then the next year we would have like Halo 3 and stuff like that, which is probably what the plan was until they separated from Activision after they saved the game with Forsaken.
And become one of the biggest games on the market. For a few days, we actually did succeed, with the game actively surpassing 1 million concurrent players. All of the big streamers were covering the game, it was everywhere on the news, and this was a huge moment for the community. Soon enough,
this was the time to get more people involved. And this is the thing. This is why people are wanting Destiny 3. They want that reset. Because right now, Destiny 2 has so much negative baggage. And I think people don't realize that, yeah, you can put more paint on the old car, but it's people look at that car and like if it's beat up and junky, putting a new paint on it isn't going to change the fact that there's a lot of negative connotation attached to that vehicle. And that's what it feels like for Destiny 2. If you do things differently, you, like I said, make it a real MMO, that would be justifying for me to be a D3. But for a lot of people, it's moving onward to a new game and leaving D2 behind and then launching D3 with like the best of Destiny stuff and to bring in all the people, which I think would do it. I do think we would have new people invest in D3. A lot of people see D2 as overwhelming. There's too much to do. It's convoluted. A lot of the content, the story has been sunset, so they're confused of what the fuck is going on. No one wants to watch a 10-hour fucking My Name is Bife video to understand the story. Like D3 could be the reset to do that. So from a not only just a financial, but from a new player and increasing your community, D3 definitely has viability. There's a lot more you could do to make it justifiable. But I think I share the same sentiment that a lot of people do, that if D3 came out, it should not be by Bungie because they can't do it. Not only financially can they not do it, but I don't think they're competent enough to do it, which is why we're still going to be stuck with D2.
Though the hype died down and we all noticed the flaws like the token system, the microtransactions, the slow gameplay, and the complete lack of endgame content. The player count plummeted to dangerously low levels, and
also the lack of random rolls. So there was no chase. Everyone had the same gun. Everyone was just given a gun. There was no chase. Like that is fundamentally the problem with base Destiny 2. There was no gun chase at all. It was a participation trophy. It was boring as hell.
Especially with the release of the terrible Curse of Osiris expansion, it looks like Destiny might not even survive for the next year.
Which is funny. The story for Curse of Osiris is still better than Episode 1, Season of Defiance, Season of the Wish, and even Lightfall, in my opinion. So even though the two tokens in a blue, that meme, yeah. Even though that's the thing, I still think I like it better than this episode. The loot was mid, but everything else, like the story-wise, is so much better than Episode 1.
Fortunately for us, Bungie absolutely cooked the following year, and they delivered Forsaken, one of the greatest expansions the game has ever seen. They finally removed the awful weapon system where players could only use 2 extremely weak primaries, and they brought back special weapons that made the gameplay feel much faster and more interesting. The amazing random roll perks returned. The new raid was great. There were new subclass trees. The story was compelling. The very first dungeon was introduced. Gambit was really popular at first, and both of the new locations were very impressive. Player morale was at a high for the first time since Taken King, but believe it or not, this was the time where things really started to take a turn for the worse. A few months after the expansion, Bungie parted ways with Activision, who had been publishing the game.
I want to just say that we all rejoiced and thought this was a good thing because we blamed Activision for the launch of Destiny 2, which I'm sure they did have some part of it, probably going for the Call of Duty every year kind of situation. But as more things have come out, we realized that Activision wasn't the main villain. They were like the side boss. The main villain was Bungie all along.
And working with them since Destiny 1. At the time, players rejoiced, and everyone thought this would allow Bungie to make the game reach that huge potential that we always knew it had. Unfortunately, though, the split with Activision also meant that Bungie lost the support of two major studios who were helping them make the game.
And these two studios have probably made better content than Bungie has at all. Like, let's just be honest. Black Armory, Vicarious Visions made the secret mission that just so fucking good. The raids that they worked on, the content in Forsaken alone that they helped on. Let's be honest. We like to give Bungie credit, but a lot of the content was made by these, like some of the best content in Destiny's history was made with help from these studios. And it is such a shame that they don't have that support anymore.
And thus, the next year did not contain a lot of content.
Yep.
Seasons became less involved, they no longer contained raids, and even the following expansions were significantly smaller than expected. This was evident in Shadowkeep, where the story left players with more questions than answers. It delivered no new destinations other than a reskinned moon from Destiny 1, and there was also a mediocre raid, nothing
the raid was ass
for Gambit, and essentially nothing for PvP.
Yep.
The game notably became free-to-play, which absolutely spiked the player counts to insane levels, but this also caused Bungie to drastically change their approach to game design.
Free-to-play was free to try. I think back then the Red War and all the base campaign was free-to-play, so there was actually something free. Back then, I think it was really actually free-to-play outside of expansions. I think some of the older expansions definitely were free to play. I don't remember the specifics. We go to it. Yeah, New Light. So you get the base of Destiny 2. That was free, and that was fantastic because you get the whole beginning part of Destiny 2, the lore, the story, learning how to play the game. You get the whole package. That was a free to play. That was great. And then Forsaken was its own expansion. That makes sense. You got to pay for it. But the base game was free. Now we have less, like, we don't, like, how many stories are free? I think Beyond Light's free. Is Shadowkeep free? Like, some of this is more free than I thought. Like, you still have to buy the Beyond Light pack and bullshit like that to get access to everything. But I still think the base, when Destiny 2 had all its base core campaigns before it was sunset, I think the New Light experience was much better.
Which absolutely spiked the player counts to insane levels, but this also caused Bungie to drastically change their approach to game design. Instead of focusing on improving the core of the game like they did in the past, Bungie leadership was now focused exclusively on developing paid content. This meant that all free content, including PvP, would essentially get zero development. And
that's the problem. If you look at successful free-to-plays like Fortnite, they make sure their content is good, even though it's free. They've got Legos. They got the racing. They've got Guitar Hero, a Rock Band. They've got custom games, like all these free things. And they don't just let it go to waste. They're always innovating. They're always improving upon it. And that's the problem that Bungie has always had. Anything that's free in the game has always been left to rot.
Gave zero attention to strikes, Gambit, and anything else that wasn't a part of a season or an expansion.
And this is still very true to this day. Like, they still neglect these things very heavily.
Even Trials of Osiris, Destiny's most iconic PvP mode, returned in a terrible state with zero new loot and just some old reskins from Destiny 1.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, but yeah, I think it was just old, which, don't get me wrong, I think for the first iteration, bringing back the old stuff is fantastic. Bringing into Destiny 2, I think the how often we got new armor was definitely underwhelming. It was so underwhelming that we didn't get constant every expansion a new set, and that's still very true to even this day. We're still not getting new Trials armor every set. All the new armor is going to Eververse instead, which is bullshit. But I get you. One thing that you have to know is that when Trials did come back for the first time, they were heavily aggressive with banning people. In fact, my first account got banned because the LFG person I played was, I guess, he was hacking in some way. He was using snipers. I don't know if he was wall hacking or aim hacking. I don't know what it was, but they banned anyone associated with a hacker during the first week And then they got more lax, obviously, because the cheaters are still running wild, even to this day. But for that first week, they wanted that to go so successfully, which is funny. If they actually did that for every week of trials, they had that exact dedication to making sure cheaters were banned, I think that'd be a good thing. Now, not banning the people that are playing with them. I quit Destiny for like almost an entire season. I came back at the end of Season of the Warmind or whatever the hell it was called, with the Almighty and all that crap, and I regrind everything. So I have like 1,000 hours on that one account, and I have or almost 2,000 hours, and now I have like 9,000 hours in this other account. And then, yeah, overall, my point is Bungie has shown that they can do things, and historically, they don't continue that pattern. They just let it go because they're like, oh, here's the one and done.
Decision to abandon the development of Destiny's core would prove itself to be one of the more damaging decisions for the game's future. Expansion after expansion, there would be literally zero PvP content, and this understandably led to most PvP players quitting the game. Nowadays, almost nobody plays the game for its PvP anymore, but back in the day, it was a much different story. PvP used to actually be respected and updated,
It was really
a huge
good.
part of the game for many players such as myself. Expansions used to bring us 8 PvP maps and a handful of new modes.
God, man, we did not realize how good we had it with Activision, having 2 different studios help Bungie. We got so many maps for PvP. And imagine if they just brought more of these maps back to Destiny 2. Like this map right here, I forgot what it's called, but it's so good with the Vex teleporters. It's just so good.
But sadly, Bungie decided
not
to
teleporters, was the launch pads.
Millions of players by completely abandoning PvP and reassigning their developers to instead work on Marathon.
Yep.
Another thing that irreparably damaged the game and its reputation was Bungie's refusal to deal with cheaters, even when they were completely overrunning the game. When Trials returned, you literally couldn't play a single card on PC without facing multiple teams of hackers who absolutely ruined the experience for everyone else. The Crucible became a total joke, and yet again, PvP players felt extremely disrespected and disappointed.
Yep.
The game had essentially zero anti-cheat, and for years, Bungie leadership simply refused to invest money in the security of their game. By the time they would finally partner with an anti-cheat company in 2021, many Crucible players had already quit the game out of frustration.
2021. I want you to really sink on that. Destiny 2 has been out for so long, and they just not even a couple of years. It's 2024 right now. 2021, we finally got anti-cheat. That means that Bungie was actually monitoring like Trials back then when it first came out the first week, and they were hard banning people. They put the time and effort into actually banning people. Now we have anti-cheat, and it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. Like you see hackers all the freaking time. And yes, Bungie is like suing. Granted, they fired their security team, like multiple security members. So they probably still don't even have a security team at the company right now. So that's why they're going after cheats. They're suing the cheat websites instead. But that's not going to stop them. It's like a Hydra. You cut one head, another one's going to show up.
Due to the split with Activision, Shadowkeep and the following seasons had very little content, and players were unhappy that Shadowkeep was so much smaller than Forsaken. Bungie leadership noticed this, and they concluded that they had actually over-delivered by releasing too much content in Forsaken. They thought that it was a mistake to create an amazing...
Yeah, this is some bullshit right here. Like, I think Forsaken was a pinnacle of expansions, and it makes sense if you're having seasons that are lackluster. But this will forever be the poster for Bungie. This will be their nightmare. This will go on every leadership at Bungie's gravestone. Beware, overdelivery. You're creating patterns. Like, I don't think there's game companies that are bold, but I don't think there's anyone as stupidly bold as Bungie to just say this. Dog shit company.
Amazing expansion like Forsaken, because players now expected that future expansions would also be amazing and also have a large amount of content. So from this point onward, Bungie leadership decided that they would produce consistently mediocre content so that the player base would always know what to expect. Instead of letting their developers create something awesome, the leadership forced them to release a worse product. There were allegedly many situations where a team of developers wanted to go above and beyond and create something really cool, but then the leadership stepped in and told them, and I quote, "We should not ship this because it's an over-delivery that will set us up for failure in the future."
Yeah. And I want to say something. I think that a lot of developers do love Bungie or Destiny and really want it to shine, but I still blame developers. Like, if you have this shitty, like, even now, the morale is very low in Bungie with the layoffs, the past layoffs, and the fact that the final shape didn't sell nearly as good as Lightfall. I mean, sure, now they probably made some numbers, but I would be very impressed if it overlapped total sales of Lightfall comparative. But the final shape did not do as nearly as hot as Lightfall at launch. And it was a superior product than Lightfall, in my opinion. But obviously morale's low. People are complaining about leadership. I still blame developers. There are people, I think the truckers that were, and even, there's other people that are currently striking. I forgot what they call it. They're on strike. I mean, from the educational field, not too a couple of years ago, teachers went on strike. Like, at some point, you've got to make a decision and say, you know what, you live in fear. That was a quote from someone. We live in fear. You live in fear. You don't like what's going on. You're being limited. It's very obvious that leadership is willing to throw you on a grenade. I think it's time that you go on strike or you do something. But until if you are complicit with how things are, then you are also responsible. You share the responsibility. If you're complicit in it, then you are responsible for it too. And so I equally blame developers as much as I blame leadership. Until developers stand up and say no more, then they're responsible for it too. Like, what are they going to do? If every developer went on strike, is the leaders going to fire all developers? Get out of here. No, they're not. Like, have some balls. Do something. I can't feel sorry for developers if you're not willing to actually stick up for yourself and do something. As long as you are complicit and allow things to continue to happen, I don't feel sorry for you. I'm just waiting for more layoffs at this point.
Looking back, many players consider this the reason why Destiny has stagnated over the years. There was
it's definitely a huge reason.
A severe lack of innovation, and no ambition for making anything that might actually shake things up and surprise us. Every single season felt identical because Bungie wanted to avoid over-delivery, but... By
the way, this is the season that I came back. I played the last season and left for several months and came back at the tail end, like, I think the last week, 3 weeks or something, the last month of this season here.
Repetitive
it was very mid.
Seasonal model would turn out to be extremely detrimental to the game. Many people even started misinterpreting this and calling Bungie lazy. But in reality, the hardworking and passionate developers were just being held back by their management.
Yeah, I think there definitely is some, like, I think it's okay to say that content that comes out is lazy, especially when they reuse assets. But I think you have to realize that, I do realize that there's leadership that are pushing them to speed content out. And that's part of the problem. But I'm still going to call it lazy content because it's still lazy.
Following Destiny's move to become free-to-play, the presence of microtransactions and in-game monetization started to increase substantially.
Oh, it's even worse now.
A contentious topic in the community, but players were becoming increasingly annoyed as Bungie added more and more items to their ever-expanding Eververse store. During the rest of the year of Shadowkeep, this happened, and therefore everyone went into lockdown and started playing a lot of video games. Bungie saw this as an opportunity to expand, an opportunity to grow beyond Destiny, and ultimately become a studio with multiple successful games.
Bungie's new non-Destiny game sounds like a potential Diablo-style dungeon crawler. Yeah, this is when Bungie decided, hey, you know what's a good idea? Let's, instead of focusing on the game that we have for years, that instead of improving upon this game, we're just going to do a bunch of other things. Because I think what I call the Halo effect. Bungie left Microsoft because a lot of this, there was a lot of creative problems, but Bungie, I think, was also very tired of Halo. But Microsoft wanted more and more Halo, And Bungie probably didn't want to do that, which is why they did Destiny 2 over in Activision. They wanted to move away from Halo. They were done. They were tired. And I think the same thing was happening with Destiny. They were tired of Destiny. It was time to move on. I mean, that's why they got non-Destiny games, why Marathon exists, why there were so many different non-Destiny games in incubation, because they wanted to step away from it and do something new. Which is fair, but like fix the main problem first, your main selling game, and then work one at a time. Like they're like too many teams spread out. Like, what do you expect?
They went on an absolute spending spree, hiring hundreds of new employees and handing out hundreds of promotions to existing employees. In fact, they gave out so many promotions that there were now too many managers with big salaries and not enough people to do the actual work.
And that just goes to show this is the biggest mismanagement of Bungie. They don't know how to spend money. And it's very obvious that it was like a baby on crack. That's a bad example, but they were literally like a kid that's been given a bag of candy and they're eating it like it's crack. Like they were spending so much. And the fact that there were more people actually like being leaders than actual workers says a lot about the direction of the game, how it was being misled, how it was overemphasized. Like there were so many issues and it was leadership. And I'm glad that we have less leaders in Bungie now. And I still think we need to drastically cut the leadership at Bungie even further.
That is a direct quote from people who worked there, by the way. Like they literally had too many higher-ups and not enough real developers who would actually make the game. In addition to this, Bungie leadership started to mismanage their resources to an extreme degree.
Yep.
Instead of focusing their capital and efforts on Destiny 3, they instead spent millions of dollars developing new games that would ultimately never see the light of day.
What a great use of money.
Hundreds of talented developers away from working on Destiny and instead put them on all of these little incubation games. Many different projects were created, developed, expanded, and then destroyed, costing the studio an unfathomable amount of money. As one person described,
and it went down the toilet. That's why Sony's telling them to get their head out of their ass, by the way.
Bungie somehow seems to forget that they only have one product, yet they seem to put their focus towards everything except for that one thing making them money. Their senior leadership needs to be gutted. They simply don't have the first idea on how to run a gaming company, it seems. It wasn't.
Nope. There's a reason why people didn't like Pete Parsons when he was part of Microsoft. There's a reason. Like he's incompetent, but it's not just him. There's plenty of our leadership that's in the dark, that's lurking. The board of Bungie, they're all useless.
Wasn't just random people on the internet who thought this either, because internally there were reports of employees straight up telling the upper management that doing all of these incubation projects was not going to work out very well.
Nope.
When the Beyond Light expansion finally released in 2020, Bungie leadership made perhaps their greatest mistake of all time by removing huge chunks of content from the game.
Sunsetting.
They actually took away a lot more content than they added. So this expansion was in fact not an expansion. It was actually a contraction.
It was evolving just backwards. I think this will forever be. This is another reason why people want Destiny 3. This will forever be a stain in Destiny 2's history. No one will look at Destiny 2 and they will never forget. People who bought expansions will forever remember Bungie for this and Destiny for this, or removing paid content. I don't even think WoW does that. Final Fantasy, Elden Ring, Diablo. There's not a single game that I can think of that removes paid content. That will forever be the sin of sins for Bungie. No one will ever truly respect that company ever again for that reason. I won't. I'll never truly respect the company.
The removal of content and the so-called Destiny Content Vault was easily the most hated thing.
And by the way, I just want to emphasize, Bungie really tried to sell the sunsetting as a good thing, as an exciting thing. It's like, hey guys, it's a new opportunity. We're really going to be able to expand Destiny again because we're getting rid of all this. Our engine can't handle it. So we're really going to shape things up. We're going to get so much loot, guys. you're gonna be back to square one in no time. Yeah, we really were back at no time. It just took like how many years?
They've ever done, and all of this content simply got deleted. Like, just look at the amount of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and I hope, like you were talking about, Curse of Osiris, Leviathan, the Whisper. By the way, a lot of this seems not like a lot, but if you look at the actual like campaigns, Red War is very expansive. There are so many expansive stories and lore that is removed from the game that new players will never know. They heard of Gaul, but they will never experience the battle of Gaul, the travesties of the Red War campaign. They will never know. They'll never understand. And it's a shame.
They removed. Bungie claimed that removing the content was necessary, and maybe it was, but it had an extreme ripple effect that crippled the game for years to come. It also had a
Funny enough, I don't know if he still works at Bungie, but he doesn't. He's jumped ship.
Massively negative impact on player sentiment, with one popular comment reading, "They lost my trust and I stopped playing when they removed the campaign we paid for." That's theft, literally. There were hundreds of videos.
Which, by the way, more and more laws are coming in place for consumer protection, especially when they're not going to let you keep the game when the servers shut off. They're actually going to put more and more countries, and I think even states, are putting in laws for our protection. Thank God. Like this bullshit needs to stop. And I think if a company does something like what Bungie does, they should absolutely be penalized a hefty fee, and we should all get paid like massive. Immediately, we should get refunded for all the expansions that we lost. Absolutely. So that's never going to happen. By the way, we're never going to get our money back. Just to let you know, you're never going to get that money back. But I'm just saying, in the future, I think that needs to be in law so that these companies don't do these dumbass things like Bungie.
And articles just absolutely roasting the game for deleting its own content. And you've got to understand, it is not normal for an MMO to do this.
It's
Destiny
not.
Quickly got the reputation for being that game that,
by the way, Destiny is MMO and like Halloween. Like it's a first-person shooter looter game with a MMO mask. That's all it is. It's not a real MMO. It really isn't.
Deletes its own content. And this was a massive meme in the broader gaming community. They can legally remove whatever they want from the game, but from the gamer's perspective, it simply sucks to buy things and then have them taken away a couple years later.
And I'm hoping that soon that will be illegal. I think for gamer protection purposes, it needs to be illegal. Game companies need to deter from these kind of mishaps. And I think with how even people who don't play Destiny remember this and continue to call back to this, I think that we won't ever have to necessarily this problem. Just shutting down servers in general is the overall problem. But I do feel like no other game is going to be as dumbassery as Bungie by taking content that's already in the game. I don't ever foresee this happening, mostly because it is still a long-lived meme. Whenever people talk about Destiny, people who don't play it remember this specifically. Isn't that the game that removed content? I can't believe that game's still alive.
Existing players of the game were obviously unhappy about the removal of content, but the people who got hurt the most were actually the new players.
Yes.
Since such a large portion of the game's history just got deleted, it became extremely difficult for new players to get started and understand what is going on in the game. With almost all of the story no longer existing, Destiny's narrative became extremely confusing because you could no longer experience all of the events in the timeline. The vast majority of free-to-play content was also gutted, so new players became far less likely to actually get deep.
Yeah, I want to emphasize a couple things, because I don't know if he's going to do it, but I'm going to do it for you, for new players, people watching this. I want you to realize, I gave credit earlier in the video about the new light experience. You had all of Red War, you had Curse of Osiris, Warmind, all that core base Destiny 2 lore. The reason for the number 2 in Destiny, that was free. They removed all of that. All you had, and even now to this point, like we still have, with all the content that's in Destiny 2 right now, it's still more of a free to try game than it is a free to play game. It is still very much a free to try game. But when they made all that content free, it was a free to play game. It's not that anymore. They sunset so much stuff. And lore-wise, like Curse of Cyrus, Warmind. Curse of Cyrus introduced us Osiris. You learned who he was, what was going on, how did we rescue him. We learned about Saint 14. We saw his grave. We understood how he died. Warmind, we learned about Anna Bray. We learned about the Hive Gods. We learned about Rasputin. All that is gone. So a lot of people don't know who the fuck Saint 14 is this episode. People don't know who Osiris is. Like, why does this matter? Like, why do I care? Rasputin. All these, Anna, they've had some more build up in their character because of previous expansions, which is good. Like, we're actually interweaving them in the main story. But there's just so much lore that's been lost. So I just want to emphasize that for new players and returning players who maybe forgot.
Deep into the game and want to buy the expansions. The new player experience as a whole was just an unmitigated catastrophe.
It was
somehow,
garbage.
Bungie leadership decided that they
somehow they relegated the new player experience to the Astacross knockoff hunter dude. Like I don't know, like you don't even like we've never met this dude before. I just want to emphasize this guy was not in Destiny 1. He's just this random ass dude that popped up out of nowhere. Like he has no real lore. Like it would have made more sense also for like just a side tangent for him to show up in the final shape to actually play a part. But we don't know who this motherfucker is. He's just a dude that looks like Astacross.
They were okay with this. Year after year, nothing would be done to improve the new player experience. New players are essential to keeping any live service game alive, and it blows my mind that Bungie leadership did not invest a single dollar into fixing this absolute disaster. There have been...
It's funny. I think of Warframe, and Warframe's beginning missions were just so like, it's so meh, but they have spent so much time and dedication on those first missions for the new players to educate you. Like literally the first mission tells you how to pick a gun up, how to use your abilities, how to do this and that, how to jump and interact. Like it literally, they continue to revamp the tutorial. Bungie just gave us a random Astacross dude. That was the tutorial. And then they finally build off of that a little bit. And so it has a little bit more going on for it, but it's so long and convoluted. It's so boring and uninteractive. It's like, I actually went through the new player experience and it was ass, dude. I was so actively bored and confused that they missed out on some of the most, like mods. There is no tutorial on how to fucking do mods.
Thousands of Reddit posts where a new player joins the game, gets completely lost, and then quits because the game is so unbelievably confusing and literally nothing is explained. I have 2 different million-view videos explaining exactly what is wrong with the new player experience. I basically spoon-fed the exact list of issues to Bungie, but still, their leadership decided to do nothing. They would eventually...
Here's the thing. I do think that Bungie does watch these videos. Hell, I'm sure someone has watched at least one of my videos. Some of them have popped up and they check Twitter. Like, if you don't think that people they're not scouring the internet, and I intentionally tag Bungie so they can see the videos, I guarantee that they see the videos. Not mine. I'm just saying videos like his and other, like, I guarantee that they are seeing all these videos. Someone's like, oh, they'll never see it. Oh, I guarantee they are seeing it. That's also how they know, like, they check speedrunners and all this, and that's how they know to nerf things. This is a different topic, by the way. But overall, like, I guarantee they see this feedback, even on Twitter, and they don't do anything with it. Years of feedback. This is why I give them such harsh criticism, is because they don't do fucking anything with it.
Actually add a couple small tweaks like the Guardian rank system, but quite truthfully, these things did not move the needle for improving.
They didn't help. Guardian ranks was pointless. All it did was lock out gear and mods from people. That's all it did. Like half the time, Guardian ranks feel pointless. In fact, I think it created a bigger problem, and you see it all the time. It created a system of prejudice. People don't want to play with 2s and 3s and 4s. If you're not like a 5, 6, or 7, hell, people like even forget that PvP players only get like 5 or 6. They don't give a crap to do the rest of this. But they won't raid with people at a certain level. If you're not like at 8 or 9 or 10, like that's a real thing that happens. So they created a system that actively hurts new players. Dumbasses.
The new player experience. In other news, the Beyond Light expansion continued the trend of neglecting PvP by removing 11 maps instead of adding new ones. Especially considering the introduction of the overpowered Stasis subclass, PvP got infinitely worse as a result of this expansion.
I'm going to be very honest with y'all. I was that dude, that hunter that just slammed. I land my cheeks against your face, and I loved it. I loved every moment of it.
This was especially obvious if you ever watched the best players in the world, because the only 2 times that they would lose a game is if they lost to a cheater or if they lost to Stasis.
Yep.
Bungie was also famous for being extremely slow at fixing any of the issues with their game, and this time was no exception. But
let's stop and let's be honest here. I want to be very honest. People are like, oh, I can't believe they let this happen. They did it intentionally. When something comes out hot and broken, it's not an accident. It's intentional. That's how they want sales. They intentionally ship things hot so that you will buy it because you want to play with the hotness. You want to be competitive. You want the good. And then they plan on nerfing it later. It's been added. And it's not just Bungie that does that. Other game developers obviously do this, but this is very noticeable with Bungie.
Entire year.
Now, sometimes they do ship things out like underwhelming for no reason. It's really weird. But most of the time they ship things out hot to drive sales.
Here for the broken Stasis abilities to finally get balanced. Frustrating would be an understatement. Later in the year, Bungie finally introduced a much desired transmog system that allowed you to customize your appearance.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how it took years to finally get a basic MMO transmog system? Crazy. But you know why they did it? Is because during this time, they needed money.
Would have been cause for much more celebration, but unfortunately, Bungie decided to limit how many ornaments you could get for free at just 10 per season. If you wanted to get any more than that, you would have to purchase additional currencies from the Eververse store with.
And I made a video about that, and there's so many Bungie bots out there, people trying to defend Bungie, like, well, it's not that bad. What you're all just complaining. It was obvious that it was just an intent. Like any other MMO, I can go play Diablo 4 right now and I can transmog any damn armor I own. I don't have to pay for it. It was such a convoluted system. Not only was it grindy as fuck when it first came out, intentionally to make it harder to get, but they also wanted you to spend money. And the only way to go past the 10 on each character is you had to spend cash money. And it's still the same way. Actually, I don't think it was 10. I think it was 5. I think they bumped it up finally. But the reality is it was a garbage system. It is still a garbage system compared to any other MMO. It is stupid.
The real money, greatly upsetting the player base and reigniting the backlash against the Eververse store. It was still nice.
I like to point this out that Bungie has always been scummy. Whenever I talk about when Bungie tries to do a new scummy thing, I always refer to the older things. Like, you guys are thinking this is not a big deal, but remember when they did this? People tend to forget. They have these rose-tinted glasses. They forget that they try to be false positive, and they can completely forget the negative things that Bungie has tried. And it's so annoying that a small portion of the community just turns their brains off.
To have transmog now in the game, but somehow it also ended up being quite a controversy. The initial reception of the Witch Queen expansion was quite positive, with the new legendary campaign being a major addition, and it had people saying that this was the best expansion since Forsaken.
Absolutely.
We also got some really unique exotics, a couple of new activities, and the new Throne World destination.
God, yeah.
It did become clear, however, that people were starting to get significantly burned out on the game after the initial honeymoon period wore off.
People were getting tired of seasons.
The story was extremely excellent, but Bungie continued to avoid overdelivery by delivering essentially nothing for the core of the game.
Yep.
PvP got literally no updates except for a loading screen, Gambit got downgraded, and I think we got like 1 or 2 new strikes, so overall, people were not very satisfied. With all of that aside though—
Wait, what's that? We got 2 strikes? And imagine that. Nowadays, we only get one.
So this expansion did introduce a new weapon crafting mechanic that initially people were extremely excited for.
Uh-huh.
It let you get whatever perks you wanted on your weapons, and this was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
After some time passed, though, more people started to realize that this would significantly reduce the replayability of the game
Yep,
for
there it is.
dedicated players.
Absolutely.
Although people did like crafting the weapons to get amazing perk rolls, the crafting system also made much of the game's loot completely irrelevant. For
Yep.
instance, if you crafted all of the raid weapons, you no longer had any incentive to ever run any
Yep.
of the raids ever again.
Absolutely.
Before crafting existed, many dedicated players always
Imagine the incentive in a looter shooter is the loot. I will never understand people, and anyone that thinks that the grind is bad, never play another MMO or another looter game. Just never do it. I just go play Call of Duty, go play Halo, go play Fortnite, go play Minecraft. There's crafting there. Like, just never play another MMO or a looter shooter game ever again. I'm just putting it out there. Like, I will never understand people who whine and complain about grinding. And I know what bad grind is. I played Destiny 1. People bitching about Destiny 2 and as RNG and it being so bad. I know what a bad grind is. I know. And I don't want to go back to that. And we could still improve the grind in Destiny 2. Like, that conversation is not off the table. But the chase has been destroyed because of crafting. And that will always be my stance. And I'm glad I'm not the only one that realizes it too. Even Bungie's starting to realize that and why we're finally going backwards.
loved the prospect of potentially one day getting that perfectly rolled weapon to drop from a raid. But after the introduction of crafting, all of that loot chase was removed. Something that really started to annoy players.
I do want to give Bungie credit though. Like, he's right, but I think crafting is better for raids for the casuals. And for us tryhards, we have the adepts with like multiple perks on it that makes it even better than craftable. I think that's fine. Like, I actively spend a lot, even though I crafted like all the guns very quickly from Salvation's Edge, I still spent a lot of time grinding out the challenges and trying to unlock all the adept weapons. Like, I spent a lot more time in that than I have in previous raids because of crafting. But the new adept changes were fantastic. I think it's fine. Raids can have crafting. I'm not going to, very rarely do you have new players playing raids anyways. So we want them to come and play. I'm okay with them getting their red borders, whatever.
Players around this time was the repetitive nature of the seasonal model. For
It's
years
courage.
now, we had been leveling up these random tables, unlocking our Battle Pass rewards, replaying some boring seasonal activity 50 times, and then slowly progressing through some time-gated story missions.
Yay,
Burnout
time
was
gates.
high, and as players continued to leave the game, Bungie was losing a lot of money.
Yep.
And as a response to this, Bungie decided to spend even more money. Even though almost
Genius work, Bungie.
all of their employees were working remotely, they decided to spend an unfathomable amount of money building physical studios and massively increasing the size.
Is that Halo? Do they have a Halo statue? Is that or is that a Titan? I mean, I don't know. I can't tell from here.
Buildings. They doubled the size of their studio to be over 200,000 square feet, built an entire new office in Amsterdam, and also started leasing multiple floors of the massive 2+U tower. But
which a lot of the news broke out from people who got laid off and people who are insiders. They hated this. Like, and I know some of this was probably pre-COVID, when they were hoping for more people, but it was a perfect example where they were counting they were trying to overspend their horizon way too broadly. And then COVID happened, obviously, and everyone went home remotely. But I think overall, like, even if the lease was way before COVID, I still think that they overspent in this regard. And a lot of the employees feel the same.
Bungie would go on to become a, quote, digital-first company, and a huge portion of their employees were working from home. So all of this new physical office space would end up being seen as a very lavish and unnecessary expense.
Yeah, very lavish.
We'll talk about the layoffs a bit later, but suffice it to say, employees were very upset when they found out that Bungie decided—
Wait, is that Christopher Barrett? I can't tell.
decided to upgrade their headquarters instead of paying
No, that's not. That's PAX Helgeson.
their salaries. Due to their insane financial illiteracy, it became
I'm just trying to see if I can find Christopher Barrett checking out the secretary somewhere in the video.
clear that Bungie would be unable to pay off their debts and that they would soon become insolvent. After wasting hundreds of
Yeah, I want people to realize this. Bungie was such an incompetent company, at least the leadership, that they were almost insolvent. You don't do that unless you really fuck up. You not only did they push players away that much that they become almost insolvent. No, that was just a general statement. There's not an extra thing for that. I don't know why I worded it like that. But they fucked up so much they almost went insolvent because of the fact that players weren't playing their game. They weren't buying their garbage.
millions of dollars on failed incubation projects, insane promotions, huge new buildings, and hundreds of new employees, the company found itself in an extremely difficult
And I guarantee like half of that's still probably there.
position. They were desperate for someone to come bail them out of this nightmare, and then luckily, Sony agreed to buy them for $3.6 billion.
We had this because PD Boy oversold him. Oversold
This was
Bungie.
a huge moment for the survival of the company, but even after the acquisition, Bungie really didn't fix any of the problems.
No, and add context, and I don't know if he's going to say it, but an ex-lawyer for Bungie came out and said that literally they thought, and this is per the thoughts of the company, that Sony wouldn't get involved, that Bungie would be left to do their own thing. And Sony spent $3.6 billion on them. And Bungie, developers and the leaders thought Sony wouldn't get involved, that they would be left to do whatever the fuck they want. Now I can see why Sony said to get their head out of their asses. Sorry, yeah, Sony told them. Yeah.
That caused them to become insolvent in the first place.
Yep.
They kept investing crazy money into making new games instead of working on Destiny.
Sony handed out money and helped try to support their company. And then Bungie's like, oh, money? Let me go burn all of that on useless shit. Instead of trying to save the company and build it back up and really just get back to our roots, let's just continue to do the dumb shit that we were already doing.
They kept ignoring the core game modes, they kept ignoring the terrible new player experience, and they just hoped that things would magically get better. There were reports of employees literally begging the leadership to make the changes that players wanted, but these cries for help were sadly ignored.
Yep.
Leadership clearly had an overly ambitious pipe dream of making Bungie a multi-IP studio that would have like 5 games going all at once. But
and now they just have one.
Unfortunately, this ambition led to the decline of the one IP that was actually making all of their money.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
So what they thought is that they could do the bare minimum, half-ass it, and that the Destiny community would be dumb enough to continue to eat the slop, which there is a large army of Bungie bots that will eat whatever garbage Bungie puts out and call it amazing. But overall, the community said no. And here we are today.
It turns out that trying to fund 5 games by siphoning money away from Destiny is probably not the greatest idea in the long run. The studio was losing money and operating in the red, and eventually, layoffs would become inevitable. Destiny's next major expansion, called Lightfall, was hyped up about as much as any expansion could possibly be hyped.
Oh, God.
Major streamers were
I do want to just stop and give some context. This is COVID, or people were looking at games. There wasn't a lot of games out there currently that people were like, oh my God. But overall, people were hyped because of Witch Queen. Witch Queen was so good. And even though the seasons were overall, people were still hyped for Lightfall. And Bungie, this is what I always say, be skeptical of what Bungie does on trailers and what they say on their little dev streams. Bungie really hyped up Lightfall, calling it the Infinity War of Destiny. Like, they really hyped it up. They even went so far as to hire, what is this? Is this XQC at Shroud? I think this is Shroud. They went all aboard to pay streamers, a lot of streamers, to play the game. And I'm gonna let him talk about Lightfall. I'll throw my 2 cents.
playing the game for the first time in years, and many people decided to give the game a second chance.
Yep.
Destiny was nearing the end of its first massive story that had been building up for 8 years now, and everyone was excited to see what would happen next. As it turned out, though, this was probably the worst possible time for people to return to the game. While visually stunning, the much-anticipated Lightfall campaign was universally hated. The narrative...
It is almost comical how Bungie is so incompetent that every time the spotlight is right there on Destiny, where people are getting excited and this is the prime opportunity to expand, they show a dumpster fire. When you pay so many high tier streamers to play your game and it is absolutely dog shit and they want nothing to do with it, all those potential people who would invest in it normally are going to back the fuck off. And that's exactly what happened and is still happening.
Did not push the game forward in any significant direction, and instead it just talked about this thing called the Veil without ever explaining to us what the Veil actually was.
Yep. It's the MacGuffin. You don't know why you need a MacGuffin. You just need a MacGuffin. And Cyrus, this old guy, you don't know who Cyrus is. It's the old guy that's screaming, we need to stop them from getting the MacGuffin. Don't let them get to the MacGuffin. Why is the MacGuffin bad? We don't know, but we need to stop them from getting the MacGuffin. And at the very beginning of the mission, we see Callus go off and we don't know why, but we're like, Cyrus is like, we need to follow him. But like, why? And this is right there. No, them. We need to go with them. They're going to go for something. How do you know? We don't know. We just know to know. So stop them. Get the MacGuffin to do the MacGuffin to stop the MacGuffin from doing the thing. That is Lightfall.
Bife put out a scathing video that went trending on YouTube to talk about just how bad the storytelling
really was. It was so bad.
Unfortunately, the hype to disappointment ratio was probably higher now than it had ever been in the franchise's history. Nobody was happy, and one popular comment from the time said, well, we've got to give it to Bungie for successfully meeting their criteria of under-delivering.
Yep, good job, Bungie.
The failure of Lightfall would lead to many people not being interested.
Like I said, under-delivery will always be, that will go on the gravestone of every Bungie employee. That will absolutely go on every gravestone.
Interested in playing the following seasons, or even the following expansions. People lost all faith in Bungie's ability to tell a story, and players really did not have a lot of hope for the future.
It was all
Bungie
garbage.
Continued to deliver their cookie-cutter seasonal formula, which wasn't impressing anyone. The player count headed towards all-time lows. The state of the game was a post that dropped in the summer, and people were furious that it realistically delivered more bad news than good news.
Yeah.
At a time when we desperately needed to be reassured about the future, the article basically just said, like, yeah, we aren't doing much for PvP, strikes are getting a tiny update, and Gambit is not popular, so we aren't doing anything there. It's almost like
they straight out said, in fact, this is when Bungie started cutting off all necessary things. Like, we're not doing challenges or any of the stuff, the seasonal stuff for Gambit. Don't worry. We're not going to make you do it because we don't like it either.
Bungie had the Pikachu surprise face when they realized that Gambit and PvP were not popular anymore after they were literally ignored for 5 years.
Imagine that.
The showcase for the Final Shape expansion was also pretty underwhelming, as it did not show off any new subclasses, enemies, or gameplay systems that would notably change the overall experience.
This was the worst, dev insight to an expansion. Had they not gone back and really amped up with Into the Light and another dev stream showcase, I'm going to tell you, no one would fucking have bought in the Final Shape because this was a travesty. I've never been more unhyped for something in my life as a main expansion. Oh my God.
A little while later, Bungie responded to the outrage by assembling a mini PvP team to improve the Crucible. But the truth is, this was far too little and far too late. As I explained earlier, the vast majority of PvP players quit years ago due to the clear pattern of neglect. And ultimately, this promise of a new PvP team was not going to convince them to come back. Around this time, the loot chase for Destiny became almost non-existent. The harsh truth is that almost nobody's going to be excited about the 200th SMG that is only 1% different from all of the others. Especially with the crafting system giving players access to all of the best perks.
Exactly. That's the problem of crafting. At least if you have RNG, you may not always get the 5 out of 5 God roll. Don't worry, in a couple seasons, you're going to get another SMG that you can chase. That might be the 5 out of 5. And then you can just delete that and use the new one. But overall, like, crafting just makes anything new like pointless.
Many activities just didn't feel as rewarding anymore. After you crafted the new weapons from any given season, there was simply no incentive to play anymore, and people were definitely getting bored.
Yep.
In the fall of 2023, things became more dire than ever before as Bungie laid off a sizable portion of their company, parting ways with massively important employees such as the incredible music composer Michael Salvatore.
Yeah,
at this point,
that was one of the biggest slaps to the community, that this guy made some legendary soundtracks and Bungie had the audacity to lay him off. And it's obvious probably because he was expensive. He's probably expensive to hold, and they decided to outsource. But no one's going to make better music, which is probably why there's not a single damn soundtrack in the final shape that maybe there's some, because I think he did work on the final shape. But like, when I mean, I think the episode 1 was, I mean, there's no soundtrack from episode 1 that I think is good. I think final shape, he did work on it. I don't know. It wasn't definitely not his best work, if he did. But we have some bangers because of him, and it's just sad that now he's gone.
Became publicly known that Bungie's leadership was absolutely awful, and employees shared terrible stories about mismanagement and poor decision-making. There were multiple tweets of current and former employees just blasting the CEO and the leadership team for their actions. Someone allegedly asked Bungie leadership if they would consider reducing their salary to prevent layoffs.
No.
And then they answered that Bungie was, quote, not that type of company.
No. Other companies, like the Elden Ring company, they actually gave their people raises. Nintendo, I think, may have took a cut, surprisingly. But there have been other companies that have taken cuts that have also given their company raises. You should never expect leaders at Bungie to do anything that's beneficial except to them. Bungie is a shitty company. And as long as the leaders that are been there for years continue to be there, Bungie will always be a shitty company.
At the same time that this was happening, Bungie CEO Pete Parsons was actively spending millions of dollars on all
I have had so many Bungie bots get so mad. Like, why are we talking about his cars? He earned that money. I don't know why we keep talking about his cars. It's not funny. He earned that.
Expensive cars, and not even considering
Please tell me he talks about it.
His own insanely
I want to see if he talks about it. If he doesn't, I'm going to say something.
High salary. Leadership at Bungie appeared to care more about their own wealth and car collections than about paying their hardworking employees. In the spring, Bungie released a lot of new content to fill the gap before the final shape expansion.
Okay, is he going to talk about the second layoffs? I still want to talk about the cars.
This was called Into the Light, and it brought back a ton of non-craftable loot that players were actually very excited to get.
Fantastic.
This period leading up to the final shape was quite a high point, and players couldn't wait to experience what would be coming with the conclusion of Destiny's main saga. We all had very high hopes because Bungie publicly announced that they were trying to make this expansion one of the best of all time. The Final Shape expansion launched in June 2024, and man, it was an absolutely incredible experience.
It was a good experience. Do I think it's better than Forsaken? No. I think it still under-delivers compared to Forsaken. But is it better than Lightfall and like Shadowkeep and Beyond? Oh, absolutely. In that regard, I do think it drops the ball significantly in a lot of places. So much so that it is probably even more of a disappointment, in my opinion, narratively, than Lightfall. I know. We'll do. I eventually want to do a review. I keep giving hints at my review, but eventually we'll do a review. But I do think overall it was a good story, a good expansion. It was fun.
We got a satisfying conclusion to the story, and
I don't know about satisfying, but
the Traveler, and a whole bunch of nostalgia that
for Bungie at this point, it probably is as satisfying as we can get.
Wrapped up the last 10 years of Destiny. With their backs against the wall, Bungie was forced to finally make something awesome, and they arguably over-delivered for the first time since Forsaken. Despite its amazing reception though, the expansion did not sell very well, and actually it sold even worse than Lightfall. After all,
I think after couple months, it's finally sold more than, and it's got to the numbers of Lightfall. I don't know. I mean, either way, the fact at launch that they did worse than Lightfall, even COVID numbers do apply. But the fact that this is the conclusion and that people weren't interested in the conclusion, yeah, that's pretty bad.
All of the negativity about the layoffs, the failure of Lightfall, and the repetitive seasonal model, many people were scared that Bungie would disappoint them once again.
Exactly.
The nail in the coffin, though, was the fact that this represented the end of the road for many longtime players. The story was concluded, the loot was acquired, the objectives were reached. There really wasn't that much to do, and Bungie didn't announce anything about the future of Destiny. Tons of people were sticking around until the conclusion to see things through. But with the final shape now complete, they felt like they had reached the end of their journey as Guardians. There were top Reddit posts saying things like, "I paid for this year's content and I can't even will myself to play it." Kind of like Avengers Endgame, this was kind of just a natural ending point for many players, and Bungie massively messed up by not announcing the future to keep people interested.
Let's be honest, though. I don't even think Bungie knew what the future was. It wasn't until Sony told them to get their head out of their asses. I think they want to skate by until Marathon eventually came out and they were just going to do these episodes. And then Sony's like, bitch, what? No, you need to do something. There's no one playing your damn game.
We lost players at a rate faster than Lightfall, and actually faster than ever before. Due to the financial underperformance of the expansion, Bungie leadership had to lay off another wave of employees, this time parting ways with even more people than last time. CEO Pete Parsons was reportedly flexing his exotic cars in the faces of employees.
This is why people hate Pete, by the way, and they keep bringing up his car. The douche canoe literally showed up. Someone tried to defend. I made a video a while back about this, and someone tried to defend him like, well, that is pretty scummy of him, but let's not make attacks based on around that. Let's focus on the game, because when we start attacking stuff like that, then our arguments aren't serious. Bitch, this is part of the whole argument. He's a shitty person running the company in a shitty way. He should not be anywhere near Bungie. And this is why.
Literally 2 days before he laid them off. Due to this incident and many others, his current and former employees were seen publicly roasting him on Twitter, with countless examples like this one saying,
how Sony has not removed, technically, I want some context. He used to be just the CEO. Now he has a co-CEO, which is not pro-typical for games, by the way. To have a co-CEO is, but to have one just randomly in the middle of a life of a game, not even the middle, this late in the game, is not prototypical. You have to really fuck up for Sony to decide, no, we're going to assign a co-CEO, because Jackass McGee decided to really screw up the company so much that Sony decided you don't need to be the only CEO. And I don't know how he is still in charge at any degree. The rumor is that after Marathon comes out, he's going to get his little bonus and pay raise. And then he's going to law of the leaders are going to leave. I hope that's true. Get the heck out of Bungie.
Pete is a joke. A few days later, it was also revealed that Destiny 3 was never in development. And this ultimately crushed the hopes of many players. Due to Bungie spending all of their money on Marathon and their new studio and a ton of failed incubation projects, they didn't have any left over to build Destiny's future. If they didn't do all of those things, they could have easily built Destiny 3 over the past few years. But instead, Bungie now finds themselves in a situation where their only source of revenue is dying faster than ever before.
Oh, true.
The decision to not develop Destiny 3 will easily go down as one of the greatest fumbles in game development history, and it lies entirely at the feet of Bungie's terrible leadership.
I think with the fact, I agree. I think they did such a disservice to the community and their company by the perfect way to end Destiny 2 was the final shape. And then they could start an entire new story, new loot, new destinations. They could do a whole new Destiny, but they didn't. They were so incapable for managing their money, their time, their resources. All those incubation projects should have been focused on Destiny 3. And the fact that they were never working on it in the first place tells me that they wouldn't be able to do it now at the rate that we are. They can no longer do it. So that's why they're going to squeeze as much life into D2 as possible. But in my honest opinion, the final shape should have been the capstone for D2, and we should have went to D3 if we were going to continue on a new saga.
I think that any logical company would just replace their terrible leadership, but unfortunately, it seems that Bungie is not a very logical company.
And the developers are not logical either, and they sit there and take it. Like they're as I guess as dumb as the Bungie bots that bend over and let Bungie reach in, pull out their wallet, take their money, kick them in the mud, and then they turn around and look at Bungie and say, "Please, sir, can I have some more?" I guess they're just as incompetent as the Bungie bots.
CEO and other board members just remained
They were made for each other.
Despite everyone, including their own employees, literally begging for their replacement. Bungie leadership needs to actually face some sort of consequences for their failures. This is ridiculous.
It makes no sense that Sony hasn't done anything. That is the one biggest fail on Sony that I will blame them for, is the fact that they haven't done anything else to leadership.
The new episodic content model for D2 turned out to be exactly the same as the seasonal model, except now there would be even less content coming out on a yearly basis. Bungie acted like they were giving us an exciting new gift, but then they just gave us the exact same shirt that we've been wearing for the past 7.
Remember, guys, episodes are the logical evolution of seasons. That will always be my favorite statement from that showcase.
Years. Following this, the player sentiment became infinitely worse than ever before, and so did the player population.
Yep.
With notable examples like the Encore mission, Destiny has also started
what
to
a
become
dumpster fire.
Buggy in the past few months.
By the way, this is a perfect time for me to showcase. If you want to see my brutally honest review, and this is part of it for episode echoes, the card is above for you. I go over all the problems with this episode.
Might be wondering why this happened, and according to former community manager Liana, they have laid off their entire player support team.
Man, imagine that. There's no support.
Somewhat of a comeback due to Bungie getting rid of a large portion of their security team. I predict that things will continue to become more and more broken due to the complete absence of some of these teams,
and incompetence of
leadership. This is going to cause even more frustration among the community. If you take a look a little bit deeper into the game's gradual decline over the past few years, it becomes clear that Destiny doesn't really have an audience anymore.
Nope.
The veteran players are tired of the repetition, and new players are incapable of joining us due to the laughably bad new player experience.
I've had so many comments of new players who complain about the experience and just the irritation of not knowing who certain characters are. It is so baffling how bad it is, which is something that Sony has told them they need to fix their new player experience.
There simply aren't
we need to be able to onboard new players.
Any new players joining us to replace the veterans who are quitting. One person wrote, "Before Beyond Light, nearly every friend I tried to get into Destiny stuck around. Since Beyond Light, not one. Literally not one person I've helped get into the game played for longer than a few weeks. They never played by themselves, only when I was on. They just never had a clue what to do, no matter how much I tried to help guide them. The game has ballooned so much and become so convoluted and confusing that it is completely unapproachable for anyone who doesn't have a PhD in Destinology from playing the game for the past 10 years.
And here's the thing. I know YouTube is a thing, but if in order for you to know how to play the game, you have to watch 30 YouTube videos. You have to spend hours and hours researching how to play a game that doesn't basically teach you that. It's a bad game. It is a shitty game. It may be fun if you're already into it, but it is a shitty game if it doesn't do a good enough job and you don't have to watch 30 different tutorials. How do I start playing this game? Now, obviously, there are going to be tutorials on how to do an encounter. Yeah, sure, whatever. But I'm talking about like the base game. Like if you're a new player, you don't even know where to start.
I really don't know what else to say. The new player experience has become one of the single largest contributors to Destiny.
There are so many pop-ups, so many quest grabs, timeline reflections, spark of hope. Pick your new class, pick your armor, pick your weapon. Oh, there's an exotic mission to do. What the fuck is this? Oh, what's this? I'm getting a bunch of icons blinking. Oh, I need to play the Witch Queen. I need to play this and this. Like, which one do I do first? Like, how is the new player going to know?
Decline, and Bungie's leadership refuses to do anything about it. The only other thing to consider is perhaps the returning player population, but it turns out that the game has become so overcomplicated and unexplained that their experience isn't too great either. Quote, as a lapsed player, Bungie made it so hard to get back in if you lapse. For new players, it was almost impossible. It was a fundamental business mistake to not attract new players. It was an ever-dwindling pie. The other thing I've realized is that if you return to the game, you basically just do whatever is new, and then you realize that the core game and the seasonal model still hasn't seen any innovation or improvement for the past 7 years.
Garbage.
And then you probably quit again, because who wants to do the same things for 7 years straight?
Nope.
We still have quests where you fly to the helm, then fly to Ikora, then fly to the helm again, and then you watch some boring dialogue on a holo projector, and then you fly to Nessus, and then you fly back to the helm for a third time, and then you go do a public event. There has been
Horror Lost Sector or Season of the Wish last season, before episodes. You went to the Ascendant Plane, Mara's Ascendant Plane, and the end of the mission was literally touching her seat. You touched her seat, you get dialogue, and that was the end of the mission. Very innovative for Bungie.
So little innovation for so long that players have grown tired of it, and the quality bar is actually on the floor.
It is very low.
That this is kind of what Destiny 2 has become. I want a reason to log in and play and grind. I want fun things to do in the game, but there just really isn't.
Nope.
Despite the game being in a far worse state than ever before, some people think that Destiny is still doing fine, and I've seen a few statements like, oh, this happens every year.
These are the Bungie bots. People are fucking dumb. And these are the brain rot, dumbass people that are actively trying to combat fair criticism. These are the people who are like, oh, Bungie, don't listen to them. No. And they're trying to shut you up. You are the reason why you're part of the reason why this game is dying. Because you're so fucking stupid.
We'll be back to normal in a few months. I normally try to be pretty optimistic, but in this case, I'm sad to say that things are really different this time. Never before have content creators been forced to leave the game because they're literally unable to pay their basic bills. Many of us have started covering new games and slowly abandoning the Destiny franchise. Personally, back in June,
and he's talking from a content perspective. As someone who doesn't play Destiny for a living, I have a community that's very vocal. Many people have left because of this, because of the incompetence. And a lot of people aren't going to come play the game because they see the incompetence. They see such negative morale. And people try to be toxic, have toxic positivity to try to brush things as, oh, it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. Like, it is okay to give fair criticism. You can live in your little la-la land, but this is the worst state that Destiny has ever been in.
All in. I was so optimistic about covering this game because I thought that Bungie was developing a future for it. Unfortunately, nowadays though, I'm questioning whether it will even be possible to make Destiny videos as a full-time job anymore. There are roughly 50 full-time creators covering this game, but as of September, all of them have either been covering new games or they are reaching record low view counts.
Yep.
Based on all of the data and all of the analytics that I have access to, it's clear that players have never been less interested in playing the game.
And that's the thing. When Call of Duty has millions of viewers and it's people, and let's be honest, Call of Duty does do like copy paste every year, but people still play it because the gameplay is still fun. It has millions and millions of viewers. Other games, Fortnite it's been around for a very long time and it's still very popular. The views, the population, all these statistics, all these analytics, it looks bad for Destiny. Destiny's never been worse. And it's time to people pull their head, just like Sony said to Bungie, pull your head out of your ass. These Bungie bots need to pull their head out of their own ass too. It's time to wake up and smell the sunshine.
The one thing that Destiny does have going for it is that there is really no serious competition.
This
There are,
is
of
the
course,
great
some
saving grace.
comparisons like Warframe, but nothing really comes close to Destiny's universe, gunplay, and power fantasy.
And the foundation is a beautiful thing. If there were ever to have anything that was a true Destiny competitor, Destiny would have been dead a long time ago. That's the bottom dollar. It would have been dead a long time ago. And right now, that Bungie, the only competition Bungie has is other games that are just fun. There are other games like Wukong, Space Marine, Warframe, The First Descendant. All these games are competing in the space of this game wants you to spend all your time playing it, and this is where you're going to spend your time and your money at. That's the competition Bungie's facing. Not an actual one-to-one competitor, but competition in time and where money is going. And Bungie has to pull their head out of their asses, or other games are going to pull all the attention away, which is already happening.
I assume that players will probably return to Destiny every now and then to reevaluate the game, but I think it's pretty safe to say that the best days of Destiny 2 are now behind us.
Yes.
We've lost players every year for the past few years. We are currently losing players faster than ever before, and it seems that we will continue to lose players as we go into the future. The game certainly will not disappear overnight, but it also will not see any form of major revival anytime soon.
I think he's absolutely right. The way we have had content in the past, big expansions, big content, we probably will never get that again. Or at least not until like many years. Bungie is in such a bad place financially, and such a bad place morally, or in morale-wise, should I say. We're not going to get that content anymore. I mean, we're not. The best days, he's right, of Destiny are over. And because of that, many people are going to be done with Destiny because they know they're going to get less. We know what we've gotten in the past, and we're not going to get that anymore. So people are leaving. If Call of Duty's going forward and improving, Destiny's going backwards. We're getting less content. And that's a problem. Any game that starts reducing the content that it does and give is going to suffer. And I guarantee we're going to start seeing more and more numbers of people leaving and staying that aren't even going to come back to see if the new season's interesting. I think Revenant's going to see a dip or an increase, and then we're going to see a dip. I guarantee we will. We will see an increase. But I doubt we will probably never get back to the numbers that we had pre the final shape and into the light numbers. We will probably never have that again.
I asked players on Twitter about this and requested that people tell me what it would take to get them back into Destiny. So many people answered with Destiny 3 that it literally started trending on the platform. It is abundantly clear that millions of players would come back for Destiny 3, but due to Bungie's poor leadership decisions, Destiny 3 will come out years into the future, if it even comes out at all. I do also want to say that Destiny has a lot of unrealized potential. It might even have more potential than any other game on the market. We have great gunplay, build crafting, characters, lore, space magic, and an amazing foundation.
Why would you show Maya? She was like the worst villain we've ever had. Like, why are we going to waste time showing her face?
For PvP that was simply never capitalized on. We have all of the puzzle pieces that could make up an incredible game, but Bungie has never quite put the pieces together in the right way. They have come close with expansions like Forsaken, and if they ever get it completely right, they will have an absolute masterpiece on their hands.
Absolutely.
I hope you enjoyed hearing.
What needs to happen is Sony needs to have other companies help out. That's how you get Forsaken. Bungie cannot do Destiny alone. They can't do it. If Sony's smart, they're going to have other companies, like get the God of War developers who know how to make worlds and story, work with Bungie, come up with cool creative ideas, focus on the single player aspect, and then I think it's all going to come together. Sony literally owns Activision. Have the people, if any of the people that are still, like, if they still have Vicarious Visions and High Noon and all of them, or any of those developers that helped with Forsaken, pull them back. Like, so it's on Sony that really do some course correction, because Bungie never will. Like, truly.
This story about the fall of my favorite game, and I want to let you know that we recently spent over 1,000 hours creating an insane movie about the entire evolution of Destiny. I highly recommend that you watch that video now.
which, by the way, I'll put the link to this down below. So if you want to check out his channel and check that out, I've said enough. This has been almost a 2-hour video, but I think I personally probably will never make a video like this where it goes through the timeline and history of the fails of Bungie. But I'd like to have something like this documented on my channel to always point to, like, there is a full video dedicated to all the failures and mistakes of Bungie. It's all there. You cannot ignore it. Bungie has a history, and people like to ignore it. You can't. And as long as Bungie is in control, I have no faith in Destiny. I have no faith. Because the leaders and the developers who are complicit in the leaders and not trying to do anything, that will be the downfall of Destiny. And I do truly believe one day Sony will dissolve them into their company. And maybe that day they'll get a new developer based on Destiny. We'll get Destiny 3. We'll get a banger. We can only hope. As it stands, I have no faith in Bungie. They have done nothing. There's zero that they have done that's new, that's really innovative, that have shown me that they're pro gamer, not pro company, that it's all for the benefit of the players. That's really, really turning the ship around. I have no faith in them, and neither should you. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor. Until next time, hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel for more. As always, enjoy your Monday. Game out.